That I'm your guide to help. I will talk in a few minutes. The Greek Apocalypse of Peter and its otherworldly landscape of memory. Texts and stories influence our perception of the world. What could be seen as a small country in the east of the Mediterranean, as a mixture of desert, coast, a few cities and the Dead Sea, plus some greenish surroundings of the Sea of Galilee, is perceived as the Holy Land. Awesome. In its historical capital, Jerusalem, we find a place of the size of a soccer field, which is perceived as holy by the members of 3 different world religions. Battles were fought and people died for this space. And a big part of today's conflicts in the Near East cannot be understood without the idea that Jerusalem's Temple Mount is the holiest place in the world. From a geographical perspective, the Sinai is a mountain like many others. It is biblical stories which make it so special. The world we construct does not only consist out of places which can be located on a map, and perhaps even visited. It is also full of imagined spaces whose role and function can change in different times and different contexts. The connection of space plus story, perhaps written text, plus in many cases aspects of different media like rituals, art, music, material culture, is able to construct landscapes of memories. It is these landscapes which help us to make sense of the world where we live. In the following paper, I would like to have a look into a widely neglected text which, however, played a decisive role for the development of ideas about the imagined space, which, even if nobody knows in how far it is real, and I think it's not very real, which influenced not only Christian societies for centuries. I will draw attention to the Apocalypse of Peter, which contains the probably earliest detailed Christian description of hell, but also refers to other otherworldly places like paradise and the kingdom of Christ. My main question will be, in how far does the Apocalypse of Peter, with its construction of the world, want to reframe and influence its readers' perception of the world? And in how far does it create a memory which wants to be important for readers and hearers of the text? In other words, while social memory theory usually is interested in the, and I quote Tom Hattina's invitation, in the process by which groups and individuals both reframe the past to make it intelligible in the present, and make the present intelligible through a reframed past, I will focus on the question in how far the Apocalypse of Peter creates a narrated world which wants to make sense of the reader's real world and their situation in this world by changing its perception. And all this also has to do with perception of time. Before I go into the text, a few introductory issues are necessary. I hope that all of you, or almost all of you, have an English translation of the text I will focus on, because this is not a very well-known text. The Greek and Ethiopic Apocalypse of Peter, this is a text which should not be confused with the Coptic Apocalypse of Peter from 1911. This text is transmitted in several versions. Besides 2 smaller fragments in Greek, plus a few quotations by ancient Christian authors, there is a longer Greek fragment preserved in the 6th or perhaps 7th century so-called Achim Codex. This is a codex which you perhaps have never heard of, but it's the same book wherein we have the only manuscript of the so-called Gospel of Peter. This fragment, however, is in many ways different from the only full text, which is, however, extant only in Ethiopic. All this makes any scholarly treatment of the text quite difficult. At the same time, the presumed original version of the Apocalypse of Peter seems to be much older than the extant fragments. It is quoted explicitly in the early works of Clement of Alexandria, and Clement perhaps has even written a lost commentary on this text, and other ancient authors. as Wolfgang Grünsteuer has shown, that 2 Peter makes use of the Apocalypse of Peter as one of its sources. So the canonical text uses an apocryphal text as its source. The other one is the Epistle of Jude. A date of the Apocalypse of Peter in the early 2nd century Common Era is quite probable. There is still some discussion regarding the more exact date and provenance. Some authors think about Palestine and Syria in the time of the Bar Kokhba War. I think, and I made a case for early 2nd century Alexandria. For our purpose, all this is not important. It is not necessary to come to a definite decision regarding this. It may only be interesting that the Apocalypse of Peter gained some importance in the East, with both Egypt and Syria as main centers of its reception, and was read during Good Friday liturgies in some Palestinian communities until the 5th century Common Era. After the 4th century, it seems to have been increasingly replaced by the Apocalypse of Paul, the vision of Paul, which gained enormous influence in medieval Western Christianity's perception of the underworld and the end of times. And if you know Dante's Divina Commedia, this text is heavily influenced by the Apocalypse of Paul. I don't want to talk about these developments, but I will concentrate on what the Apocalypse of Peter is doing with us. Due to the given time frame, I will only be able to concentrate on one of these text forms, in this case the long Greek fragment from Athene. The extant text starts with a few sayings of Jesus, which obviously form the end of an otherwise lost eschatological speech. After this, Jesus, who is called the Lord throughout the fragment, invites his disciples to go to the mountain and pray. This leads the 12 disciples to approach him with a fascinating request. Verse 5 on your text. When we went with him, the 12 disciples, begged him that he would show us one of our righteous brothers who had gone forth out of the world, in order that we might see of what manner or form they are, and having taken courage, might encourage the people who hear us. The passage doesn't just introduce a new topic, it opened the door for the reader's perspective on several levels. Even if the term righteous brothers could denote righteous ones of the Old Covenant, and the Ethiopic text is much more the case, the term brothers and sisters is so closely connected to the language of early Christian communities that one is at least also reminded of the possible righteous Christ followers and their post-mortem fate. Although the extant text doesn't allow an exact decision regarding the question whether the scene is pre or post-Easter, this is in any case an anachronism. Speaking about righteous brothers who already died and at the same time thinking of them as Christians does not fit into the time of Jesus' life or even shortly thereafter. This corresponds with a second aspect of the text. The disciples do not ask out of simple interest or even because they only want to know something about their future fate. Their request is set into the horizon of their own preaching. If they see what will happen to the righteous ones after their death, they will take courage, but can also encourage the people who hear us. Of course, none of the 2nd century and later readers of the Apocalypse of Peter had direct access to the Apostles' carry-on. The text thus relates a question which could be interesting to everyone. How will my post-mortem fate will look like if I am considered a righteous one to the apostolic times? It will give an answer which is connected with the authority of Jesus, the Lord, and which, according to the text's self-conception, is transmitted through the witness of Peter. The text thus connects the present question and its answer not only to imagined origins of what it could call the Christian movement, but to the decisive authorities related to these origins. In other words, it creates and shapes memory. The answer is even more interesting. In a certain sense, the whole extant fragment can be related to verse 5. We will first read about the vision of 2 of these righteous brothers, verses 6 to 13, after which Peter asks a second question. And where are all the righteous ones? Or what is the aeon in which they are who have this glory? Verse 14 will pan out. This again leads to a second vision of a very large country outside of this world, a kind of paradise, so 15 to 20. The text, however, does not stop here. Together with Peter, we do not only see the paradise, but also another place opposite to that one, gloomy, and it was the place of punishment, verse 21, which from now on is described in extenso, verses 22 to 34. After this, that fragment ends quite abruptly. Of course, it is always problematic to interpret a fragmentary writing. But even in its present state, the text creates a memory about the past wherein questions were handled which remain decisive up to both the first and later readers present, plus their hope for the future. In addition, it starts to reinterpret this world by adding outside spaces to it, a paradise and a hell in direct opposition to it. A closer look into at least a few passages of the text will reveal a bit more about the concrete functions of this construction. First, our text is not only interested in a construction of the future of its future fate of its readers, it wants to encourage them to be and to remain righteous in a situation which is understood as dangerous, and where they probably feel hard pressed and even persecuted. Of course, our text first relates an epiphany of two angel-like figures in indescribable heavenly glory and beauty. When Peter asks, "Who are these?" the Lord identifies them as your righteous brothers whose forms you decide to see. 13. But not only the first vision is concerned with the righteous ones. The second one is framed by related terms as well. Peter asks for the aeon wherein all the righteous ones are. Verse 14. He envisions the paradisiac country and is taught, "This is the place of your high priests, the righteous men," verse 20. Although it is not directly concerned with the fate of the righteous, the third vision, however, is perhaps even more revealing. We read about another place, a real heterotopia, aeon kai heterotopon, called the place of punishment, verse 21. The first group of sinners we see, together with Peter, are described with the following words. Verse 22, "And some there were hanging by their tongue. And these were those who had blasphemed the way of righteousness." This first view into hell is revealing on different levels. It shows again that righteousness is a key issue for the construction of the upper groups of Peter's world, and it seems to connect this with a decisive term for the addressed group self-identification. While the canonical book of Acts speaks about the way or the followers of the way, the Greek upper groups of Peter seems to use the term way of righteousness for the group addressed. This term is so important that more or less the same group of sinners is mentioned even a second time, and then punished in another way. Verse 28 goes, "And near those were women and men, gnawing their lips and being punished and having heated iron in their eyes. These were the ones who blasphemed and spoke evil of the way of righteousness, and who don't testify sinners." Already this may be understood as a sign that the addressed group feels under pressure from outside. The passage, however, is framed by two others who are even clearer. Verse 27 addresses the fate of those who had persecuted the righteous and delivered them up. Verse 29 speaks about false witnesses, perhaps in a process against the Christ followers. In the description of a hell, which merely mentions very select sins, this makes sense only if persecution is a reality, or at least a possibility. But this is not the only point. The decisive key is probably given only in the final part of the vision, which speaks about other women and men who were burned and turned and roasted. It concludes, "These were the ones who forsook the way of God, utoide esante affentes temporam tutium." With this in mind, even verse 23 can be understood as a doublet. This text speaks about sinners who turned away from righteousness. Even though both terms are variations of the way of righteousness mentioned above, it seems clear that both verses 23 and verse 34 the final part of the extant vision and perhaps its climax, if we trust that text in its fragmentary form, shows that the whole unit is not merely interested in justice as an individual concept. Instead, it seems to reflect, I always hesitate with the word, identity constructions of a group, which defines its own ethos as justice. At the same time, the outside world is understood as unjust. It is a world where the group of addressees feels persecuted and fears to lose members. But there is more to say. Most of the different sins contained in the Apocalypse of Peter's hell are not very specific for a certain group. We read about adultery, murder, abortion, the meaning of money, or same-gender sexuality. But on the whole, this hell is neither very Jewish nor mainly influenced by, for example, Orphic traditions. It can both be read in the horizon of Torah reception and accepted by Christians with a non-Jewish background. Wolfgang Blümstorff seems to be correct if he writes, salopp gesprochen könnte man hier die Umrisse einer etwas biederen Hölle erkennen, deren pädagogischer Nutzen für das Diesseits wohl am besten in der Bewahrung eines mit der Mehrheitsgesellschaft konformen Sozialgefüges besteht. One could also say, in the words of Jan Bremer, most decent Jews, Christians, and probably even some pagans would hardly have had a problem with a great majority of these implicit commandments. In other words, this vision of hell does not construct a special ethos distinct from outside groups. It does not introduce special sins of insiders like clerical sinners as we find them in the Apocalypse of Paul or the Apocalypse of the Virgin, or even transgressions against the developing Christian dogma. Instead, it serves to distinguish the in-group, calling itself the way of righteousness, and their relation to God from the unjust through lack of knowledge of God, or even had, like the sinners mentioned in verse 33, made carved images instead of God, perhaps the most Torah-like aspect of this hell. The way of righteousness is so closely connected to its God that speaking in either ways about it has to be called blasphemy. Leaving it means to leave the way of God. Following it will lead to the way to paradise. A paradise whose inhabitants have glory, praise God, and are so closely connected to Him that they can be called high priests. It thus becomes clear that our text wants to construct an idea of identity versus others who are unjust. It both closes the doors for anybody who wants to leave the way of righteousness, and at the same time seems to leave them open, or the door open, for the outsider, whom salvation can be offered by an ethos which is not too demanding. This is related to the text's creation of a landscape of memories. In the reader's present world, it is not easy to follow the way of righteousness, and some of its followers are about to leave or have already done this. The ones who understand themselves as righteous, and the ones who speak evil about them or even persecute and give false witness against them, are still intermingled. They share the same space and the same time, even if they are opposite to each other. But the Greek Apocalypse of Peter wants its readers to remember that this is not the only world. After that, we will have to go forth out of this world first life and live in another place, either in a big country outside of this world, ektos tutu kosmos, a country flowering and full of light, whose inhabitants are angel-like and full of glory, or another place opposite to that one, which is characterized by darkness, pain, and punishment. These two worlds are distinguished from each other in the sharpest manner. The old connection, however, seems to remain. While there is no chance for the sinners to leave hell, we hear, for example, about the souls of those who were murdered, watching their murderous punishment and praising God for His justice. All this wants to lead to a different perception of this world. What we see now is only part of a deeper reality. It is, however, leading to a situation where the current situation will be turned on its head. The Apocalypse of Peter thus creates memory on different levels. It relates It relates a present problem concerning the construction of identity of its addresses to both the situation in the past and authorities of the past. These past authorities present the future, wherein present righteousness is decisive to future faith, as God's judgment is righteous. Instead of the present world, which intermingles just and unjust, light and darkness, black and white, the text presents a vision of another world, a heterotopia consisting of two additional spaces, one of which, according to the text, will be inhabited in the future. As past, present, and future are thus inextricably connected, this vision of the other world has to be integrated into social memory already now, and became so influential that it became part of Christian cultural memory, but with many, many changes through the centuries. Thank you very much.
A field about which I know nothing, but I'm just wondering, is there any connections you see between this text and what became canonical texts? So is this a competing memory vis-a-vis, say, Revelation? I mean, I'm struck here that here they actually need the Son, whereas in Revelation they don't.
I do not think that this is a text which is really in a kind of an I would not see that there is any sign that we have a clear this is an anti-text against the book of Revelation. If you have the longer Ethiopic version, there is almost no sign that Revelation is used somewhere. It's a text which develops Matthean traditions about the end of times, and I would say it is perhaps the other way around. It is a text which incorporates something like Jewish and let's say Greco-Roman traditions about what we can see about the end of the world. Really like a cluster of things you find in the long text. You find an Elysian field and Acherusian sea, and you find a Tartarucus angel, but you also find sinners who are like you find them, which think against Torah, aspects of the Torah, and you find ideas which are remembering the Sermon on the Mount and so on. So, but with this text, with this passage here, I would be very, very hesitant. But it becomes, in later times, really something like, if you come into later times, there are really competing ideas of the other world. And perhaps one could think about, if you place this text in Alexandria in the 2nd century, then perhaps not competing with what you have in canonical text, but what you have, for example, in Orphic circles and so on, to say, okay, now we have the real hell. We offer the real hell, but we also offer the real paradise.
Any other questions? From the back as well. This is your chance to ask questions about hell.
I'd like to. Thank you very much for the presentation, quite fascinating. Would you say that we have a starting point of hell in your text? I'll ask another question afterwards, but I want to have that clear for myself.
This is a question where I would say yes and no. That's why. This is in a certain sense, I would say no, because we are in a world where we can. This text doesn't call this hell. So I would say we have a text which takes a certain stance in a world wherein we have already, and I would say now, cultural memories of another world where we have different kinds of punishment. This I would say. In a certain sense, I would say we have something like a starting point for a description of a hell which is related to the authority of Jesus Christ and his salvation. So in a certain sense, I would say this is not starting point of place of punishment, but this is the first text where I would really say a clear description of not just these few sentences or so, perhaps Luke 16, 90 to 31 and so on, but not something like this where you have the hell like a prison-like place with many prisoners sitting inside and related to the judgment, the just judgment of God and to being a follower of Jesus Christ. I think in this way it is a starting point.
The reason why I ask is, would you say that at that point where this text is written, it's a social memory or is it already a cultural memory? Just from theoretical.
I was hesitating quite a lot about my last sentence, and I thought about skipping it. I would say, in a certain sense, so I would again give a double answer. If you want to say, okay, if you just are interested in the connections of the motives within this hell, I would say it uses aspects of what I would say cultural memory, and putting them together in a new context. But this connection, this special connection which you have in this text, which is related to this special group, with its special focuses, I would call in this case social memory, but please tell me if this is a wrong understanding of the term. Yeah.
Not just a question.
Yeah. No, but I think it's down the levels, and it goes back to cultural memory again. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have a parting question myself. You mentioned that there's connections with Matthew's sense of afterlife here.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Is there some kind of linear continuity? Is he using the document? Is it oral? How do you understand?
This is what I said about Matthew is not mainly related to this passage here. So there is, in the first passage, you have the first part, there is this transfiguration-like account. So this passage of the righteous brothers looks very much like the transfiguration. And in the Ethiopic parallel, it's more exactly a transfiguration. You have Moses and Elijah and so on. And the other passage, which is not here explained in the Greek, is the long eschatological speech you have in the Ethiopic. Here you have only remnants. And this is quite clearly quite close to what we find in the Matthew. But it's almost impossible to decide whether this is really, whether we should work here with redaction criticism or literary criticism, because we have the Ethiopic translation of an Arabic translation of a Greek translation. And if your Ethiopic is not fantastic, you work with the English translation of the Ethiopic translation and so on. But I would perhaps use another term, which I quite like to use for the development of gospel literature in the 2nd century or Jesus literature in the 2nd century. I would call it reenactment. So you don't have, there is a written text extant. You have heard about this written text. You know of motive passes from this written text, and you not just re-narrate it, but perform it in a certain way, for a new context, very needed in a new way. I think this is also very useful for many passages of the other groups of Peter, which have parallel in the
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.